He called me an unemployed loser at my daughter's wedding, the wedding I paid for with my life savings. Everyone laughed, but they weren't laughing 15 minutes later, when his boss, the CEO, recognized exactly who I was. My name is David Miller, and this is the story of how one night changed everything. If you're listening to this, subscribe to the channel and let me know where you're watching from. It helps more than you know. The grand ballroom smelled like imported lilies and expensive champagne. It was thick in the air, heavy. Crystal chandeliers hung from the ceiling. They looked like giant glittering spiders. The light they cast was golden, almost fake. It was an obscene display of wealth, the kind of place I'd only seen in movies. And this, I was told repeatedly, was what my daughter Emily deserved. I stood near the back of the room. I kept tugging at the stiff collar of my rented tuxedo. It felt wrong against my skin, like a costume for a play I didn't audition for. I'm a simple man. My hands are usually rough from gardening, stained with grease from tinkering with my old car. Tonight they felt too clean, too soft. For 35 years I worked as a clerk in the city planning department. It wasn't glamorous. I didn't design the skyscrapers downtown. I didn't make the big deals. I was the man who made sure those skyscrapers didn't fall down. I reviewed blueprints, checked zoning compliance, navigated the endless, tedious maze of municipal codes. I ensured the rules, the vital, unglamorous rules, were followed. It was quiet work, honest work. It paid the bills, kept a roof over our heads, and it allowed me to raise Emily after my wife Sarah passed away. Sarah, even now, 15 years later, her name felt like a physical ache in my chest. She was the warmth in our small house, the laughter in the hallways, the moral compass that guided us. She would have hated this spectacle. Sarah always valued substance over style, the foundation over the facade. I missed her terribly. I watched Emily glide across the dance floor. She was a vision in white lace and pearls, the same pearls Sarah had worn on our wedding day. She looked so much like her mother, the same bright eyes, the same gentle curve of her smile. My heart swelled. Pride and profound loss mixed together. Emily was my world, the center of my universe. And today I had given that world away to Ryan. Ryan. The name felt like a stone in my stomach. He was all sharp edges, dazzling smiles, and relentless ambition. He was a rising star in commercial real estate. He worked for Harrison Enterprises, the biggest development firm in the city. He wore suits that cost more than my monthly pension. He drove a sleek black car that purred with predatory impatience. He was always moving, always hunting. He saw life as a transaction, a series of deals to be won. And from the moment he met Emily 2 years ago, I knew exactly where I stood in his ledger. I was a liability. The change in Emily had been gradual, like a slow erosion. When she first started dating Ryan, she seemed dazzled, swept up in his world. Expensive restaurants, exclusive clubs, weekend trips to the coast. I was happy for her. I wanted her to have the life I couldn't give her. But slowly, the dazzling light of Ryan's world started to blind her. Our Sunday dinners were a tradition since Sarah died, once filled with easy conversation and comfortable silence. They became rushed brunches, squeezed between Ryan's networking commitments. When she talked, her voice had a new, brittle edge. She began to look at our simple life with a critical eye. It felt like she was looking down on me. I remember the day she came over. She looked around the living room, the one Sarah had decorated with such care. "Dad, this place is so dated," she said. She picked up a small ceramic bird Sarah had loved. "Ryan says we should modernize. Minimalism is key to a clear mind." The implication stung. My mind, apparently, was as cluttered and dated as my house. I didn't say anything. I just watched her replace the bird, slightly off-center. A few weeks later, my sister-in-law, Clara, stopped by. Sarah's sister. She was always blunt. "David, I met Ryan," she said, stirring her tea. She didn't look up. "And?" I asked, hopeful. "He's too shiny," she said, finally meeting my eyes. "Shiny things break easily. Or they cut you." I brushed it off. Clara was always skeptical, but her words planted a seed of doubt, a seed that was about to sprout. The wedding planning was where the real trouble began. Emily wanted a celebration of love. Ryan demanded a demonstration of power. He wasn't just planning a wedding. He was staging a corporate event, the grand ballroom, the 5-course meal, the imported flowers. The string quartet currently playing a sanitized version of a pop song. It was all about image, and image costs money. We were sitting at my kitchen table. They showed me the estimates. The numbers made my stomach clench. It was more money than I made in a year. "Sweetheart, this is astronomical," I said. I tried to keep my voice steady. "My savings aren't endless. Maybe we could look at the community center." "It's lovely when decorated." Gran hadn't even looked up from his phone. He leaned back in my armchair. He was swirling a glass of expensive scotch he'd brought over. He never drank my coffee. "David, don't be pedestrian," he said. His voice was smooth, condescending. It made my skin crawl. "Pedestrian?" I repeated. "You have to project success to achieve it," he continued, oblivious. "This isn't just a party. It's an image builder. My boss, Robert Harrison himself, is attending." He leaned forward, suddenly intense. "Consider this an investment in Emily's future. Our future. An investment." The word tasted like ash in my mouth. My daughter's wedding, reduced to a business expense. To fund this investment, I did things I swore I never would. I cashed out the last of Sarah's life insurance policy. The money we saved for a rainy day. It was pouring now. I dipped deep into the retirement fund. The fund I'd built over 3 decades of meticulous saving. Every dollar represented hours of work, hours away from my family. I sold my reliable old sedan, the one Sarah and I bought together. I started taking the bus. I watched the city go by from a plastic seat, smelling like diesel fumes and regret. I did it all for her. For my Emily. I wanted her to have the life Sarah dreamed for her, even if it meant sacrificing my own security. I thought that was love. I was wrong. Now, standing at the edge of the ballroom, I felt like a ghost, haunting someone else's life. The music was too loud, the laughter too sharp, the air too thin. I watched Ryan working the room. He was in his element, shaking hands, slapping backs, his laughter booming across the hall. He moved with the predatory grace of a shark, always sensing where the power lay. He barely glanced at Emily. She stood alone near the cake, looking small and lost in her expensive dress. I retreated to the bar. I needed a moment to breathe. I ordered a simple glass of water. As I waited, I overheard a conversation. 2 of Ryan's groomsmen, young, arrogant. Carbon copies of Ryan. One of them was Mark, the best man. "The old man looks like he's about to faint," Mark said, adjusting his expensive watch. He glanced in my direction, then quickly looked away. "Ryan said he's some kind of retired pencil pusher," the other replied, smirking. "Probably never seen a $1,000 bottle of champagne before. Pencil pusher, 35 years of dedication, of meticulous work." Reduced to a punchline, I gripped the edge of the bar, my knuckles white. The anger was a physical thing, hot and sharp in my chest. I wouldn't make a scene. Not today. This was Emily's day. I took my water and walked away, but the words echoed in my head. Pencil pusher. The evening wore on. It felt like torture. The main course was served. Filet mignon, cooked perfectly, but it tasted like dust in my mouth. I pushed the food around my plate. The chatter at the table faded into a dull roar. I felt utterly alone in a room full of people. During the toasts, Mark gave a speech, full of inside jokes about Ryan's college days, his ruthless efficiency in business, how he always got what he wanted. Then Ryan took the microphone. He spoke for 15 minutes. A polished, practiced speech. It sounded like a corporate presentation he had about his achievements, his ambitions, his recent acquisitions. He thanked his mentors, his colleagues, even his tailor. He talked about how Emily was the perfect partner for his journey to the top. He looked at her like she was a trophy, not a wife. He mentioned me only once. At the very end, tacked on like a footnote, "And of course, thanks to David," he said, raising his glass with a smirk, "for footing the bill." A ripple of uncomfortable laughter went through the crowd. Footing the bill. The words stung like wasps. The humiliation burned, hot and heavy. I was not a father. I was a financier, and a poor one at that. I couldn't stay there. I couldn't watch this anymore. I escaped to the balcony for some air. The city lights twinkled below, indifferent to my pain. I leaned against the railing, the cool night air, a welcome relief from the stuffy ballroom. I thought about Sarah.
I thought about the life we had built.
A life founded on integrity and quiet dignity. Where had I gone wrong? How had I raised a daughter who valued image over substance? Had I failed her? Had I failed Sarah? I stayed out there for a long time, the sounds of the party muffled by the thick glass doors. I was just contemplating leaving, slipping out unnoticed, going home to my empty, dated house. Then the doors opened behind me. It was Emily. "Dad, there you are," she said. Her voice was tight with anxiety. She wasn't smiling. "What are you doing out here?" "You're missing the party. Just needed some air, sweetheart." My voice sounded tired. Old. She smoothed down the front of her dress. Avoiding my eyes. "Ryan is looking for you. Mr. Harrison has arrived." The name hung in the air between us. Robert Harrison, the founder and CEO of Ryan's company. A legend in the development world, the man we were all supposed to be impressing. "Okay," I said. I straightened my shoulders. I prepared myself for the next act of this humiliating play. "Dad, please," Emily whispered. She stepped closer, her eyes pleading. This was the moment everything started to fracture. "This is really important," she said, her voice trembling slightly. "Ryan needs this to go well. His promotion depends on it." I looked at her. My daughter, begging me to perform for her husband's career. "What do you want me to do, Emily? Dance a jig?" My voice was sharper than I intended. She flinched. "No, just when you talk to him," she hesitated, looking down at her expensive shoes. "Don't mention your old job." I stared at her, confused. "My job? Why? Talk about something else. Anything else." "Ryan says it sounds—" She trailed off, unable to finish the sentence. "Sounds what, Emily?" I pressed. "Small," she whispered. The request was a betrayal in itself, erasing my entire career, my entire life, as an embarrassment. "I won't lie about who I am, Emily," I said, my voice low and steady. "Not even for him. Not even for you." "It's not lying, Dad," she argued, her voice rising slightly. "It's just curating. Curating." Another one of Ryan's words. A word used to describe museum exhibits. Not people. She turned and walked back inside, leaving me alone on the balcony, the silence stretching between us, vast and cold. I had never felt so distant from her. I walked back into the ballroom. The noise hit me like a physical blow. I saw him immediately. Robert Harrison. He was older, perhaps in his late 60s, silver hair, a presence that commanded attention. He didn't need a flashy suit to look powerful. He wore his authority like a second skin, a quiet, steady confidence that dwarfed the frantic energy of the room. Rulin was practically vibrating with excitement. He was fawning over Mr. Harrison, his posture bent in deference, his voice slick with flattery. It was a performance, carefully calibrated to impress. Mr. Harrison accepted the attention gracefully. Smiling politely, he congratulated Emily, shaking her hand warmly. Then Ryan did something that made my blood run cold. He turned, scanned the room. His eyes locked on me. A slow, calculating smile spread across his face. He saw an opportunity to elevate himself by diminishing me, to show his boss how far he had risen above his humble in-laws. He beckoned to me. A grand, sweeping gesture. This was the moment the storm broke. "David, get over here," he called out, his voice loud and commanding, as if summoning a servant. The room quieted slightly. Heads turned. My feet felt glued to the floor. Every instinct screamed at me to turn around, to walk away, to preserve what little dignity I had left. I didn't want to be part of this performance, to be dragged into the spotlight only to be minimized. I shook my head slightly, hoping he would let it go, that Ryan gestured again, more insistently. "Come on, David. Don't be shy." Everyone was watching. Emily was staring at me, her eyes wide with panic. I couldn't embarrass her further. I straightened my shoulders, took a deep breath. and started walking towards them, my footsteps silent on the plush carpet. Each step felt like a conscious effort against the rising tide of humiliation. As I approached, I could see the triumph in Ryan's eyes. He was slightly drunk, his face flushed with alcohol and ambition. "Mr. Harrison, I want you to meet my new father-in-law," Ryan said. He threw a heavy arm around my shoulder. The gesture was meant to look affectionate, but his grip was tight, painful, possessive. Mr. Harrison turned to me, his eyes kind but distant. "A pleasure to meet you, sir." This was Ryan's chance to say something kind, to acknowledge my career, my sacrifices, to treat me with basic human dignity. Instead, he smirked. The next betrayal was delivered with surgical precision. "This is David Miller," Ryan said, his voice dripping with condescension. He paused, letting the silence hang for a moment. "He's, currently enjoying retirement." He made air quotes with his fingers, a mocking gesture, a dismissal of my entire life. I tried to interject, to introduce myself properly, to maintain some semblance of control. "Mr. Harrison, it's a pleasure. I hope you're enjoying the evening," but Ryan tightened his grip on my shoulder, physically pulling me back slightly, silencing me. "Don't interrupt, David," he hissed, his smile still plastered on his face. "I'm talking to the boss." The sheer audacity of it stole my breath. He treated me not just as an embarrassment, but as a child to be controlled. I felt small, insignificant. Exactly what he wanted me to feel, Ryan continued, his voice growing louder, ensuring everyone nearby could hear. He was enjoying this. He was savoring my humiliation. This was the breaking point, the moment the dam finally burst. "Actually, to be brutally honest, sir," Ryan said, turning back to Mr. Harrison, his tone confidential, yet loud enough for the surrounding tables to hear. He was painting a picture of me as a failure. "He's pretty much an unemployed loser," he said, the words landing like punches. "Hasn't done much with his life. Used to be a low-level clerk in some dusty government office for 30 years. Pushed paper." He chuckled, a harsh, grating sound. "But we take care of him, don't we, Emily?" The silence in the ballroom was absolute. It felt like the air had been sucked out of the room. The music stopped. The conversations died. The humiliation burned my skin. It was a public execution. I looked at Emily, my daughter, the little girl I had raised, the one who used to bring me dandelions and tell me I was the best daddy in the world. She looked mortified, but not for me. For herself. She was embarrassed by me. She looked away, refusing to meet my eyes. She said nothing. That silence, that refusal to defend me, broke my heart far more completely than Ryan's cruel words. I wanted to scream. I wanted to tell this room full of wealthy, powerful people that I had worked hard every day of my life, that I had raised a daughter alone, that I had integrity, that I had lived by Sarah's words, value substance over style. But the words wouldn't come. I was paralyzed by the pain, by the betrayal. In that moment, I felt exactly what Ryan said I was. A loser. Ryan, oblivious to the devastation he had caused, misread the silence as approval. He chuckled, tightening his grip on my shoulder. He thought he had won. "Yeah, it's tough when people don't plan for the future, right, sir?" He said, his arrogance swelling. "They become a burden." He laughed again. That harsh, grating sound echoed in the silent room. The word burden pierced me deeper than any insult. I felt a surge of anger, hot and visceral. I shifted my weight, trying to pull away from his grasp, but his grip was like iron. But something strange was happening to Mr. Harrison's face. The polite, distant smile faded, his brow furrowed. He was looking at me, really looking at me, not with pity, but with a growing sense of recognition. He took a step closer, tilting his head. "David Miller?" he repeated, his voice quiet but clear. It cut through the silence like a knife. Ryan's smile faltered. He sensed the shift in the atmosphere. "Did you say you worked for the city planning department?" Harrison continued, "The zoning and compliance division." I nodded, confused. How could this powerful man know who I was? I was a nobody, a clerk, a pencil pusher. "Yes, I managed to whisper, my voice hoarse. For 35 years, I retired 2 years ago. A slow, warm smile spread across Mr. Harrison's face. It was a genuine smile, filled with a deep, profound respect. David Miller, he said again, shaking his head in disbelief. The guardian of the coastline. I frowned. The guardian? I had never heard that name before. Ryan laughed nervously. He was trying to regain control of the narrative, to push me back into the box he had built for me. Guardian? That's a bit dramatic, isn't it, sir? He said, his voice trembling slightly. He just stamped papers. Real exciting stuff. A real stickler for the rules, this one. But the fear in his eyes betrayed his crumbling confidence. He knew he had made a mistake, a catastrophic mistake. Mr. Harrison ignored him. He kept his eyes locked on mine. The room leaned in closer. The air crackled with anticipation. 25 years ago, Mr. Harrison began, his voice resonating with authority. My company was much smaller. We were ambitious, eager to make our mark. If this story has you hooked, please hit the like button and don't forget to subscribe. It helps us bring more stories like this to light. We bid on a massive development project, Harrison continued. The biggest in the city's history. The coastal highway expansion and the luxury condos that were planned alongside it. The Ocean View Towers. I remembered the project. It was a nightmare. A behemoth of steel and glass that threatened to destabilize the entire coastal ecosystem. We thought we had it all figured out, Harrison said. The permits were lined up, the financing secured. The city council was eager for the tax revenue. The mayor was pushing it through. It was a done deal. We had already broken ground, he paused, his eyes growing distant as he remembered the past. I remembered it too. Those were the dark days in the department, when political pressure often outweighed sound judgment. But there was one clerk, Harrison said, his voice filled with a strange reverence, one meticulous, stubborn, infuriatingly honest clerk in the compliance division, who refused to sign the final approval. He pointed at me, David Miller. The room was captivated. You could hear a pin drop. He found a flaw, Harrison said, a fatal flaw in the geological surveys, buried deep in the appendices of a 1,000-page report, a report that dozens of other people had already signed off on. He looked around the room, his gaze sweeping over the stunned faces. A profound instability in the soil near the coastline. He explained. The bedrock was fractured. If we had built those towers, the weight would have caused a landslide. They would have crumbled into the ocean within 5 years. The realization hit the room like a shockwave. Dozens, perhaps hundreds of lives would have been lost, Harrison said, his voice heavy with the weight of what might have been. The environmental catastrophe would have been unprecedented, and my company, Harrison Enterprises, he continued, would have been destroyed. Bankrupted. Wiped out. I remembered those weeks vividly. The pressure had been immense. The mayor had called me into his office, screaming about progress and obstructionism. The original developers, the ones Harrison had partnered with, had threatened my job, my pension, my reputation. They called me a pencil pusher, a bureaucrat who didn't understand the big picture. They offered bribes. They offered threats. But I knew the rules. I understood the science. I had walked that coastline every weekend. I knew the land, and I refused to compromise. Sarah had stood by me, her faith unwavering. Do the right thing, David, she had told me, holding my hand in the kitchen late at night. The rest will follow. I was furious at the time, Harrison admitted, a flicker of amusement in his eyes. This one man, this low-level clerk, was standing between me and the biggest deal of my career. I tried to bully him, he said, looking at me with an expression of deep respect. I tried to go over his head. I sent my lawyers after him, but he held his ground. He presented his findings with such meticulous detail, such irrefutable evidence that the entire project was shut down. He turned back to me, his eyes shining with emotion. He told me something I have never forgotten. Harrison said, I was yelling at him in his small, cluttered office, demanding he sign the approval, and he hit at me, calm as the eye of a storm, and said, Mr. Harrison, the foundation must be sound. Integrity is non-negotiable. I will not risk lives for profit. Integrity is non-negotiable. The words I lived by. I had never realized the impact they had. I was just doing my job. David Miller didn't just save those lives, Harrison said, his voice thick with gratitude. He saved me. He saved my company. And he taught me a lesson that has guided me ever since. That true success isn't about cutting corners or bending the rules, he continued. It's about building something that lasts. Something built on a foundation of integrity. That's why they called him the guardian of the coastline in the engineering circles. The silence in the room was electric. Every eye was on me, the unemployed loser, the pencil pusher, the burden. I looked at Emily. She was staring at me, her eyes wide with shock and dawning understanding. Tears were streaming down her face, ruining her expensive makeup. She finally saw me, not as the embarrassing old man, the small, dated failure, but as the father who had lived a life of quiet heroism, a man whose principles had shaped the very city they lived in. Ryan, sensing the catastrophic shift in the atmosphere, tried desperately to interrupt, to salvage his crumbling facade. He was grasping at straws. "That's a great story, sir," he said, his voice strained. "Real inspiring. A true testament to the importance of paperwork. Really fascinating stuff." He tried to pivot, to minimize the impact of the revelation. "Now, about that new downtown project we were discussing." It was a desperate, pathetic attempt to ignore the truth, staring him in the face. Mr. Harrison silenced him with a glare so cold it seemed to freeze the air around them. The warmth that had filled his face moments before was gone, replaced by cold steel. He turned his full attention to Ryan, his expression terrifying in its calmness. The confrontation was inevitable. "Are you interrupting me, Ryan?" he asked, his voice dangerously low. Ryan flinched, stammering, "No, sir. I just thought—" "You thought wrong," Harrison cut him off. "You thought you could build your career on arrogance and deceit. You thought you could impress me by mocking the very man who made your success possible." He gestured toward me, the spotlight now firmly on the truth. "This unemployed loser embodies the very principles I have spent my life trying to instill in this organization," Harrison said, his voice rising with controlled anger. "He is the definition of integrity, the epitome of quiet competence. He is the kind of man we should be celebrating, not mocking." Ryan visibly shrunk, the arrogance drained from his face, replaced by pale, sweating fear. His carefully constructed world was collapsing in an instant. "Sir, I was just joking," Ryan stammered, his voice cracking. "It was a bad joke. A terrible joke. I have the utmost respect for David. A joke." Mr. Harrison's voice cracked like a whip, the sound echoing in the silent ballroom. "You humiliated your father-in-law at his own daughter's wedding. You dismissed his life's work. You displayed such breathtaking arrogance, entitlement, and cruelty that it sickens me." He stepped closer to Ryan, towering over him, his presence overwhelming. "I don't employ people who lack character, Ryan," he said, his voice cold and final. "I don't employ people who value money over dignity, and I certainly don't employ people who fail to recognize true worth when it is standing right in front of them." He delivered the verdict with brutal finality, the words falling like hammer blows. "You're fired." Ryan stumbled back as if he had been physically struck. His mouth opened and closed, but no sound came out. He looked wildly around the room, seeking support, seeking an escape, but found only cold, condemning stares. The glittering chandeliers seemed to mock him, illuminating his downfall. "Sir, you can't," he finally sputtered, his voice trembling, desperation making him reckless. "I'm the top salesman in the division. You need me for the downtown merger." "Ryan," Harrison said calmly, "you are not essential. Integrity is essential. You are a liability. Please, I apologize." "It won't happen again," Ryan begged, his voice breaking, the mask finally slipping to reveal the terrified small man beneath. "It certainly won't," Mr. Harrison said. "Security will escort you out. Your personal belongings will be couriered to your apartment tomorrow." Two security guards, discreetly positioned near the entrance, materialized from the shadows. They grabbed Ryan by the arms. He struggled weakly, the fight draining out of him, replaced by the horrifying realization of his downfall. He looked at Emily, desperate, pleading eyes. Emily, tell him. Help me. Baby, please. Emily looked at her new husband, the man she had chosen over her father, the man whose shiny world she had so desperately wanted to be a part of. The illusion shattered, revealing the emptiness beneath the surface, the realization of her betrayal, her blindness, her silence, crashed down on her with the weight of a collapsing building. She didn't hesitate. She took a deep, shuddering breath, straightened her shoulders, and turned her back on Ryan. The gesture was final, decisive. She rushed into my arms, burying her face in my chest, sobbing uncontrollably. The sound was raw, guttural, the sound of a heart breaking and healing at the same time. "Daddy, I'm so sorry," she cried, her voice muffled by my rented tuxedo jacket. "I'm so sorry, I didn't see. I was so blind." I held her tightly, stroking her hair, just like I did when she was a little girl waking up from a nightmare. My own heart, which had felt shattered in empty moments before, began to slowly, painfully, piece itself back together. The ram of her embrace healed the wounds inflicted by her silence. "It's okay, sweetheart," I whispered, my own tears falling freely now, tears of relief, of sadness, and of overwhelming love. "It's okay. I've got you. We're okay." Ryan was dragged out of the ballroom, his shouts of protest fading into the distance. The spectacle was over. The fairy tale had ended in a nightmare. Mr. Harrison approached us, his expression softened with compassion. "David, I apologize for the scene," he said quietly, "but some things cannot be ignored." I nodded, unable to speak past the lump in my throat. Still holding Emily, he extended his hand. I shook it, the grip firm and respectful. "Thank you, David," he said. "Thank you again, for everything. Your lesson on integrity still guides me every day." He looked at Emily, his eyes kind. "You have a good father, young lady. A man of substance. A man with a sound foundation. Cherish him." Then he turned and left the ballroom, the crowd parting before him in respectful silence. The wedding reception slowly, tentatively resumed. But the atmosphere had changed profoundly. The music was softer, the laughter more genuine. The opulence and extravagance seemed less important, almost vulgar, in the face of the raw human drama that had unfolded. The facade had been stripped away to reveal the human connections beneath. Emily and I sat at a small table in the corner, ignoring the whispers and stares. She held my hand tightly across the table, as if afraid I would disappear if she let go. We sat in silence for a long time, the weight of the evening settling around us. "I was so caught up in it all, Daddy," she whispered finally, her voice raw with emotion. "The money, the status, the glamour. Ryan made me believe that our life, the life you and Mom built for us, was small, insignificant, embarrassing. I forgot what really mattered. I forgot who I was. I forgot you." "I know, Emily, I know," I said gently. "The world he lives in is shiny, and it can be blinding." I squeezed her hand. "I got lost too. I wanted you to have everything, even if it cost me everything. I thought that was what being a good father meant. What am I going to do now?" she asked. The panic rising in her voice, the reality of her situation sinking in. "The marriage, the apartment he leased, the life I thought I was building. We'll figure it out," I said calmly, a sense of peace settling over me, quiet and profound. The same calm that had allowed me to stand my ground 25 years ago. Together, we always have. "We'll tear down what's broken and build something new. Something solid." I had lost my savings, my security, the comfortable, quiet retirement I had planned. I had faced the deepest humiliation of my life, but I had gotten my daughter back. And in that moment, I realized something profound that I had lost sight of. My worth was never defined by my job title, my bank account, or the suit I wore. It was defined by the life I lived, the choices I made, the integrity I upheld, even when no one was watching. I reached into my pocket and pulled out my wallet. Behind the driver's license was a small, faded photograph of Sarah. She was smiling at me, her eyes filled with love and pride. Integrity is non-negotiable. I had spent my life ensuring the foundations of the city were secure. One permit, one zoning review, one meticulous check at a time. And in doing so, I had built a legacy far more valuable and enduring than any skyscraper. A legacy of substance. As I held my daughter's hand, watching the candlelight flicker on the crystal chandeliers, I knew that I was not an unemployed loser. I was David Miller, the guardian of the coastline, Sarah's husband, Emily's father, and that was more than enough. Thanks for listening. Please rate this story in the comments. If you enjoyed it, don't forget to subscribe.